He swore he didn't believe in fate, until the night his Alpha cornered him in the dark, whispering secrets that could ruin them both. Every glance burns. Every touch threatens to break what little control he has left. And one wrong move could turn desire into destruction. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment if you're ready for more twists, passion, and danger. The city never slept, not really. It hummed like a living thing, neon veins pulsing through glass towers, the low growl of engines beneath the rain. Somewhere high above it all, behind tinted windows and gold-etched doors, the world belonged to Prince Hale. Richard Arden had only seen the man once. A brief glimpse in a newspaper profile that painted him as half myth, half menace. A self-made Alpha who controlled half the city's commerce empire before turning 35. The kind of man people whispered about instead of describing. And now, somehow Richard worked for him. He stood outside the mirrored elevator of Hale Enterprises, adjusting the cuff of his too-tight shirt. The receptionist's words still echoed in his ears. Mr. Hale requested to meet his new assistant personally. Personally. That single word set off every alarm in Richard's body. He wasn't supposed to be noticed. Omegas rarely were, at least not the ones who wanted to survive in an Alpha's world. He'd worked too hard to bury his scent, too hard to build a life where no one saw him as something soft and breakable. He swallowed as the elevator doors slid open with a muted chime. The top floor was quiet, not sterile, expensive. Shadows wrapped the room like silk, broken only by the gleam of a desk that could have belonged to a monarch. The air smelled faintly of cedar and something darker, a scent that made the back of his neck prickle. Mr. Arden. The voice came from near the window, low, steady, rich with authority. Richard turned, breath-catching. Prince Hale stood with one hand tucked in his pocket, the other resting lightly on the edge of the glass pane. Talk, sure. His dark suit fit like it had been stitched directly onto his frame, and when his gaze lifted, Richard swore the air thinned. Those eyes, silver gray, assessing far too knowing, landed on him like a physical touch. "Welcome to Hale Enterprises," Prince said smoothly. "I trust the orientation didn't bore you to death." Richard blinked, trying to steady his breathing. "It was thorough, sir." "Good." The Alpha's lips curved faintly, almost amused. "I prefer thorough. Sloppiness tends to cost me money." He gestured toward the desk in front of his own. "That will be yours. You'll handle my scheduling, correspondence, and anything that requires my immediate attention. You learn quickly, I can tell." Richard sat, clutching the folder in his lap. "I'll do my best." Prince tilted his head slightly. "I expect better than that, Mr. Arden." There was no cruelty in his lap. "I'll do my best." Prince tilted his head slightly. "I expect better than that, Mr. Arden." There was no cruelty in his tone, but no softness either. His voice was control-wrapped in velvet. Every instinct Richard had told him to keep still, to keep small. But then Prince stepped closer. Just a fraction, enough for his scent to slip through the air, faint and intoxicating. It was the scent of dominance itself. Crisp, dangerous, laced with something that made Richard's pulse trip over itself. He forced a polite smile. "If there's nothing else, I'll start organizing the files I was given." Prince leaned against the desk beside him. "Tell me, Richard, how long have you been using scent suppressants?" The folder nearly slipped from Richard's hands. "I beg your pardon?" "Suppressants," Prince repeated, voice mild but eyes sharp. "Synthetic. High quality. Masking agents faint, but it's there. I have a good nose." Richard's breath froze. "I don't know what you mean." Prince chuckled softly, not mocking but knowing. "Of course you do." He circled him slowly, not predatory but deliberate. "You keep your head down. You avoid eye contact. You breathe shallowly when an Alpha's near. You're hiding something, and not very well." Richard's jaw clenched. "With respect, sir, my personal life is irrelevant to my work." "Perhaps," Prince said, pausing behind him, "but your body disagrees." Richard's heart stuttered violently. He felt the warmth of the Alpha's presence, the way his voice seemed to sink under his skin. Prince exhaled softly, the sound almost a sigh. "Relax. I'm not interested in exposing you. Secrets are currency in my world, and I don't waste mine. He moved away, and Richard felt air return to his lungs in a rush. I only mention it, Prince continued, because I like to know who stands in my shadow. You'll be working close to me, and I don't enjoy surprises. Richard managed to steady his voice. Then I'll make sure there are none. Prince's eyes glinted, amused. See that you do. For the rest of the day, the Alpha barely spoke, yet Richard could feel his presence like a pulse in the room. Every movement, every subtle shift of air carried the reminder that Prince Hale wasn't a man used to being ignored. And Richard? He was trying desperately not to notice the way that low, controlled voice vibrated somewhere deep inside him. By the time evening fell, his nerves were frayed thin. He gathered his things quickly, intent on leaving before Prince said anything else. But just as he reached for the elevator, that voice stopped him again. Richard. He turned. Prince stood by his desk, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, tie loose, and just enough to look dangerous. You'll be here at 7 tomorrow. I prefer my assistant early. Yes, sir. And one more thing, Prince added, his gaze holding his. Stop wasting those suppressants. They dull your instincts, and I like my people sharp. Richard swallowed. They help me focus. Do they? Prince's lips curved faintly. Or do they help you hide? The silence stretched between them, charged, electric, unbearable. Prince finally turned away, dismissing him with a flick of his hand. Good night, Mr. Arden. Richard stepped into the elevator, chest tight, heart hammering. As the door slid shut, he caught one last glimpse of Prince Hale through the narrow gap, standing in that darkened office, half lit by city lights, looking every bit the man who owned the world. And for the first time in years, Richard's control felt dangerously thin. He exhaled shakily, leaning back against the elevator wall. Maybe it was just the Alpha's presence. Maybe it was instinct. But as the city lights blurred past, one thought pulsed quietly through his mind, terrifying and thrilling all at once. He knows. The city skyline glittered like glass shards when Richard arrived the next morning. The air outside the tower felt colder than usual, but inside, the marble floors and gold-veined walls radiated power. Every detail in Hale Enterprise's whispered control, precision. Prince. Hale's personality etched into the building itself. Richard had barely settled behind his desk when he felt the weight of that presence again. Early came that smooth, dark voice. He looked up. Prince stood in the doorway, black suit immaculate, tie undone just enough to look deliberate. His eyes flicked over Richard once, slow, assessing, intimate in a way that made his throat tighten. His eyes flicked over Richard once, slow, assessing, intimate in a way that made his throat tighten. I like that, Prince murmured, stepping closer. You learn fast. Richard lowered his gaze to the tablet in his hand. I reviewed your schedule, sir. You have the investors meeting at 10, then lunch with Richard, just his name. Soft, yet sharp enough to cut through the air. He looked up despite himself. Prince leaned against his desk, close enough for the scent of cedar and ozone to fill the space between them. You do this thing, he said quietly, where you talk like you're reading a report. Precise. Control. But your pulse tells a different story. Richard swallowed hard. I'm just doing my job. Prince smiled, dangerous slow. So you are. He straightened and brushed past him, his shoulder grazing Richard's arm like an accident that wasn't one. Keep it up. The rest of the morning blurred. Prince's tone never raised, but every word carried a current that pulled Richard closer to something he didn't dare name. When Prince gave instructions, he did it quietly, standing too near. When he reviewed reports, he reached past Richard instead of around him. Each brush of fabric, each low command, felt deliberate. By noon, Richard's composure was hanging by threads. When the investors left and the office finally emptied, Prince loosened his tie, leaning back in his chair with that impossible air of ease. You didn't touch your lunch, he observed. I wasn't hungry. Prince tilted his head. You're lying. I'm not. You are. His tone softened, turning almost playful. Omegas always lose their appetite when they're nervous. Richard froze. Sir, don't bother denying it. Prince rose, circling the desk with predatory grace. You think I can't smell the faint trace of suppressant wearing off? Richard's hands clenched at his sides. Please don't. Don't what? Prince's voice was a low rumble now. Notice? You walked into a wolf's den, Richard. You should have known I'd catch your scent eventually. The air between them thickened. Prince stopped just in front of him, close enough that every breath Richard took drew in the Alpha's warmth. I'm not going to hurt you, Prince said finally, almost gently. But you should know what kind of power you walk around pretending not to have. Richard forced himself to meet his eyes. You think I want your attention? Prince's smile deepened, dark, amused. You wouldn't be shaking if you didn't. That broke the moment. Richard turned away, voice trembling with anger he didn't quite feel. You can't talk to me like that. Prince's tone dropped to a whisper. Then stop reacting to it. He stepped back, giving Richard space that didn't feel like mercy but like a game, one he was already winning. The rest of the day passed in heavy silence. Richard focused on his work, pretending the tension wasn't sitting just beneath his skin, pretending he couldn't feel Prince's gaze whenever he looked away. Evening came. The office emptied again, and the sky outside bled orange into gray. Richard was packing his things when Prince spoke quietly behind him. You're avoiding me. He froze. I'm trying to maintain professionalism. Is that what you call it? Prince moved closer, his voice a murmur near Richard's ear. Because it looked a lot like running? Richard turned too quickly and found himself trapped. Prince's hand braced against the wall beside his head, eyes gleaming silver in the fading light. Tell me, Prince said, voice low and unhurried. Does it thrill you? Knowing I can make you tremble just by standing this close? Richard's breath came shallow. You're crossing a line. Prince leaned closer, so close his breath brushed Richard's skin. Am I? The moment stretched until Richard thought he'd break under it. Then just as suddenly, Prince stepped back, expression unreadable. Go home, he said softly. Before I forget, I'm your boss. Richard's heart thundered as he grabbed his coat and nearly fled. But just before the elevator doors closed, he heard Prince call after him. Quiet, calm, but unmistakably commanding. Tomorrow, 7 sharp again. Don't hide from me, Richard. The doors shut, sealing the space between them, but the sound of that voice lingered like smoke in his lungs. Richard pressed a hand to his chest, willing his heartbeat to slow. He had stepped into a world of power and instinct, and the most dangerous part of it wasn't Prince Hale's dominance. It was how much of him wanted to yield. The storm rolled in just after sunset, swallowing the city's lights beneath sheets of silver rain. From the 42nd floor, thunder sounded close enough to shake glass. Richard sat alone in the outer office, finishing the last of the day's reports. Everyone else had gone hours ago, yet Prince's door remained closed, a sliver of light still burning beneath it. The world outside blurred into a sliver of light still burning beneath it. The world outside blurred into a smear of lightning and reflection. He told himself to leave. He'd done enough for the day. But when he gathered his things, that same low voice reached through the quiet. Richard. He turned. Prince stood in his doorway, jacket off, sleeves rolled to his forearms, tie hanging loose. In the flicker of stormlight, he looked nothing like a man of business. He looked elemental, carved from the same darkness that shook the sky. Still here, Prince murmured. Dedicated, or avoiding the weather. I wanted to finish the reports. Prince stepped forward, slow and deliberate. Always so careful, always finding reasons to stay. Richard's throat tightened. The trains might stop. I should go before. Stay. The word landed heavy. It wasn't a command shouted. It was spoken quietly like gravity. Lightning flashed, throwing his face into sharp relief, those gray eyes gleaming with restrained heat. There's something I need to discuss, he said. Gray eyes gleaming with restrained heat. There's something I need to discuss, he said. Privately. Richard followed him into the office, heart pounding. The space was dim except for the city's pulse beyond the glass. Thunder groaned again. Prince moved behind his desk, but his attention never left Richard. You've been restless these past few days, he said softly. You flinch when I speak. You breathe too fast when I get near. Tell me why. I'm not. You are. Prince came around the desk, closing the distance until only a few feet separated them. I can hear your heartbeat from here. Richard's pulse hammered louder in answer. Prince's voice dropped lower. Do you know what that does to an alpha? The air thickened, alive with electricity and scent, the faint trace of rain on skin, cedar, and something sweeter rising beneath it. Richard's suppressants had begun to fade. He could feel in the heat under his collar, the way his senses sharpened until every breath felt like a risk. "Stop," he whispered. Prince's hand hovered near his face, not touching, only tracing the air between them. "Tell me to stop, and I will." But Richard couldn't speak. The silence stretched. Lightning burst white against the window. Thunder followed like a drumbeat beneath his skin. Then Prince stepped back, one controlled pace, and the space between them snapped like a pulled wire. "You're trembling," he said. "You think I don't notice?" "I'm not," Richard started, but the words broke Prince's smile was slight and dangerous. "You keep trying to lie with your mouth while your body tells the truth." He moved closer again until his breath brushed the side of Richard's neck. "Every time I test your control, you hold your breath, you go still like prey deciding whether to run." Richard's hands clenched at his sides. "You enjoy this?" "Immensely," Prince said, voice rough now. "Because every time you fight me, I see how badly you don't want to." The words hit harder than thunder. He turned his head just enough to meet Richard's gaze. "Tell me I'm wrong." Richard couldn't. Prince reached past him and pressed the button that locked the door with a soft click. "The storm's not stopping soon, and I'm done pretending this doesn't exist." The next sound was the low hum of rain against glass. Prince didn't touch him yet, only looked at him, studying, waiting, as though giving him a final chance to retreat. Richard's breathing came fast, shallow. He should have walked out, he knew that. But when he looked at Prince, something inside him broke open. Fear, want, defiance twisting together. Prince saw it. His jaw tightened. "You have no idea what you do to me." Lightning flooded the room again, and in that brief, white silence between flashes, he reached out, slowly, fingers brushing the line of Richard's throat. Not rough, not soft, but claiming in a way that made the world drop away. "Breathe," he murmured. Richard did, but it came out as a shiver. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then Prince bent his head, his lips a whisper away from skin, the warmth of him nearly unbearable. Richard's hands lifted, caught in indecision, then settled against the edge of the desk behind him to keep from falling forward. The storm cracked overhead. Prince stopped, eyes searching his. "If I touch you now, it won't be out of curiosity. It'll be because I've stopped pretending I can wait." Richard found his voice, quiet and raw. "Then don't pretend." The words hung between them like a fuse about to spark. Prince closed his eyes briefly, fighting for restraint. When he opened them again, the silver there had gone dark. He stepped back, breath unsteady. "Not like this," he said at last. "Not when instinct's screaming louder than reason." He turned away, jaw set, running a hand through his hair. "Go home, Richard, before I do something you'll never forgive." Richard didn't move. The thunder rolled again, softer now, as if the storm itself were listening. Prince looked back at him, voice low and rough. "You think I'm teasing you? But this," he gestured between them, "isn't a game to me anymore." The lock on the door clicked open. Richard slipped out into the hallway, the echo of rain following him all the way to the elevator. He didn't look back, but he didn't need to. He could still feel that voice against his skin, that almost touch burning like heat that would never quite fade. As the elevator descended, lightning flared one last time through the high windows, illuminating Prince Hale standing alone in his office. Hands braced on the desk, head bowed, every line of him straining against the leash he'd forced on himself. Richard closed his eyes and whispered to the silence. "You're not the only one who's breaking." The storm had ended, but the city still glistened, pavement slick, air heavy with the scent of rain and electricity. Richard hadn't slept since leaving the tower. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw flashes of silver-gray eyes, the slow tightening of a jaw fighting restraint, the space between them trembling like a drawn wire. By dawn, exhaustion and longing blurred together until he couldn't tell one from the other. That was when a knock came. He opened the door to find Prince Hale standing in the hallway, coat soaked through, rain dripping from his hair. The Alpha said nothing for a long moment. He didn't have to. His eyes held the same storm that had raged the night before. "I told myself I'd stay away," Prince said quietly, "and then I realized I couldn't breathe." Richard stepped aside without answering. The door closed behind them with a soft click that sounded final. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It pulsed with everything they'd refused to say. "You should have let me go," Richard whispered. "I tried." Prince's voice was hoarse. "You kept following me anyway, every time I closed my eyes." When their gazes met, words ceased to matter. Prince crossed the room in 2 strides, stopping just close enough that the heat between them made the air tremble. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Because if I touch you now, I won't stop halfway." Richard's breath caught. "I'm not asking you to." Whatever leash Prince had held on himself snapped. The distance vanished. The room seemed to fold around them. Lightning flickered far off, a ghost of the storm returning. And then there was only warmth, the sound of breath and rain, and the quiet surrender of 2 people finally choosing what they'd both been denying. The night dissolved into fragments, soft, wordless, inevitable. Morning came pale and quiet. The city stretched beneath a sky washed clean, and thin gold light spilled across the apartment floor. Richard woke to the steady rhythm of another heartbeat beneath his cheek. The world smelled of rain, cedar, and something unmistakably his. Prince lay beside him, half propped on an elbow, watching with an expression that seemed almost uncertain. The arrogance was gone. What remained was something rawer, truer. "You're staring," Richard murmured. "I'm trying to believe you're real," Prince answered. "I've imagined this for too long." A faint flush crept up Richard's neck. "You always get what you want, don't you?" Prince smiled, quiet, unguarded. "Not until last night." For a moment, they simply breathed together. Outside, the city roared back to life, but here everything felt suspended. Richard traced the line of Prince's collarbone, his voice barely a whisper. "What happens now?" Prince caught his hand, pressing a kiss to his palm. "Now," he said, "you stop hiding, and I stop pretending power means control." Richard laughed softly, the sound unsteady but warm. "That sounds dangerous." It always was. He drew Richard closer until they fit against each other like the final answer to a question neither had dared ask aloud. "You teased me until I couldn't breathe," Richard murmured, eyes closing. Prince's voice brushed his ear, low and certain. "Because I needed to know how it felt when you finally did." The rain began again, light, steady, forgiving. The storm had spent itself, leaving only quiet air and 2 hearts learning how to beat in the same rhythm. Outside, the city moved on. Inside, they had already chosen their truth. And for the first time since the beginning, Richard didn't want to run.